never told you guys yet what happened when I casually invited my mother to a mescaline ceremony that was being organized by my friend. Um, and this is such a powerful experience, and it ended up healing 4 generations at once in some way. Like there was definitely several layers of trauma healing and maybe preventing conditioning involved. Anyways, it was such a crazy story. Decided I should tell it. So, a friend of a friend organized these things and said like, "Hey, do you know anyone else? Right? Do you know anyone else who might also be like a good fit? Because we want to have 10 people and we have 6 people or something." I'm like, yeah, I may know some people, and I keep thinking of people. I send everyone a message, like keep coming up with new people, like, oh, maybe this person, maybe this person. And, more and more people of the original group had cancelled or couldn't make it. At a certain point, it's just like several of my friends, but also my girlfriend, but also a girl that I used to date, but also my mom, and then also like a couple of people that I didn't know, right? So I've invited sort of a mishmash of people that are somehow connected to me, and it was kind of uncomfortable to actually be there. And then, at the moment where you're about to drink the green sludge, the dreaded green sludge, and like almost like 60% of the people were there because of me, and I felt already like this is gonna be weird because I'm the only thing that connects most of these people. I just wanted to have like everyone who could benefit from the experience, have them there and like be helpful to their life by inviting them. But then I realized, man, I hope this is not all coming down on me, like I'm the only person who they know, and now it's gonna be weirdly like about me. Like when I'm on a psychedelic, I definitely don't want to be the center of attention or anything like that. So yeah, and the green sludge is being poured, and everyone's just like, "Oh, this is so disgusting," and like, yeah, it is. And there's this one English guy who's like, "Well, I think it's best to enjoy it." We just look at him like, "What the fuck are you saying? This is the most. It's offensively bitter. It's so bitter. It just offends your understandings of life up to that point, like of all time, like everything you think you know." And then you taste that bitterness, and it's like, oh my god, everything I knew in the world is wrong. Because this is just so bitter that it just wipes my entire understanding of everything. That's how bitter it is. It offends your body. So yeah, everyone's like drinking this, and like you drink it, and then you just sit like trying to like keep it down, right? Because you're not supposed to vomit it up right away. So you're just like, and your body's just saying like, what the fuck did you just give me? Like, get it out, get it out. And I'm just like, breathing, keeping it in, and everyone's like, okay, great, we took it. Now what do we do? And somehow my mom, who's also sitting at the table, being like, yeah, well, I never did this before, la la la. Did mushrooms one time, and yeah, that's kind of a new experience for me. She's like, yeah, there's a little bit left, so maybe we should finish it. Like, yeah, maybe we didn't take enough. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like maybe we didn't take enough. Maybe my mom and me should like finish the last glass, because there was one dose basically left. Anyways, we have so much bravado. It's crazy that me and my mom both had this very unrealistic attitude that we could both just take another dose, because it's like 5 minutes in, we don't feel it yet. Arrogant. Anyways, it quickly devolves into everyone being so under the influence that it's just hard to know like what is even going on. It's hard to like stand upright. Just everyone's like staggering, stumbling and staggering. People are laying down on different couches and beds, being like completely blasted because it's just so much. And the guy who was like organizing the trip also, I was sitting at some point, I'm like, I gotta be outside, maybe that's like nicer, and there's like the hot sun, and somehow the hot sun really combines well with mescaline. It was like a really hot summer day, and my girlfriend aptly noted that mescaline feels like it should be done in the hot desert, like in the hot desert sun, standing next to a scorpion. That's what it feels like. It feels like it should be anyways, I'm standing there, and the guy who made the mescaline soup, who slaughtered all the cactuses and chopped them all up, and he's like, yeah, I do feel a bit of a discomfort. I would say it's quite intense. Like, is that for you guys as well? Like, there's like, you could say there's discomfort. And I'm like, yeah, this is pretty hard to take. Like, this is even stronger than the last batch you made, you know? We're dripping so hard that it's like, you're just not comfortable anywhere. You're just like holding on to things. Yeah, whatever. It's not comfortable. You just have to kind of ride it out. And there's just no way to actually get comfortable because everything's just buzzing so hard. There's no... I didn't have crazy visuals, but everything's just buzzing so hard that I kind of compared it, which I think still is a very apt comparison. It felt like it was a really old school psychedelic, like a really old school. Like, this was one of the first psychedelics that was discovered by the Western world, and like you can tell because it feels like it's the first car without air in its tires, like it's just bare wood or metal tires without any springs in the car, and it's just like this thing that has absolutely no shock absorption, and like the first car ever made or something, and you're just riding it over cobblestones, and you're just like slamming it into first gear, pedal to the metal, and you're just driving like 100 kilometers per hour in first gear over cobblestones with no shock absorption. It just feels like you go and you have this pipe like clattering out of your teeth, basically. It's like, or I could compare the feeling to being, yeah, like what you see astronauts strapped to, who are in a spaceship about to launch. Like, it's like feeling, and it's like there for like 16 hours, and I'm like 6 hours in. I'm like, this is gonna be a long ride. And anyways, I'm standing outside. The guy is talking about his discomfort, and then the bleak British guy is turning that into a conversation about agony. And it's like, well, maybe we're all always in agony, and this is like the first time you actually feel how much you're always in agony. I'm like, how do we get from discomfort to agony? Like, don't be so dark. I don't want to hear this. Like, what do you... No, just... Anyways. So the whole trip is sort of kind of going like that. It's quite uneventful. There's not many conversations because everyone's so blasted. But then it happens. Like, at that point, my someone comes in, and I'm like on this bed chilling with my girlfriend and another woman who was there, and we're just kind of talking but kind of not able to talk, basically. And someone says like, hey Eric, your mom would like to see you. I'm like, yeah, that's all right, my mom was here, yeah, oh my god. I'm like, yeah, sure, yeah. And at first I couldn't find her. She's buried under a pile of 2 other women, and in my mescaline mode, I was like, has anyone seen my mom? Can't find her. Walked past the pile of people, asked the pile of people. It turns out she's under the pile of people. All right, so okay, she's there. It's like, oh yeah, come here. And like, I'm being gestured to be part of the pile of people, and I'm like, my mom's in tears, like she's bawling. She's like, and I don't know what's happening, but I'm laying next to my mom, and I got my arm around her, and she's like, I'm so sorry, Eric, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry about that, and like, oh God, like, what is she sorry about, It turns out that she's replaying all the ways in which she thinks she fucked up my childhood, basically. So all the mistakes that she, in her perception, made are like torturing her at this moment, and she's like, so sorry. And I'm like, oh my God, no, like, and it just goes deep immediately. Like, she's bawling, I start projectile crying because it goes so deep. It's like this mother-son, like, aren't you proud of me? You didn't fuck me up too bad because I'm here, right? Aren't you? My life is going well. Can't you see I'm happy? Like, and she's like so sad and inconsolable, and somehow the conversation goes into, yes, very specific moments in my childhood that I didn't consciously remember, but she remembers as like that's where I made a mistake, and I'm like, she's like, didn't that hurt you? And I'm like, well, to be honest, I do remember that, to be like feeling a bit unsafe there, or yeah, I'm not gonna share the exact details, and I don't also remember all of them, but she was able to come up with these very specific moments that I wasn't aware of, but then I was like, oh my god, that could have been a moment that was a bit that was like difficult for me, or like I lacked something there, or like, anyways, like everyone has these moments, but she was able to pinpoint them so well. Like it put me into this like processing my childhood sort of stage, while she was also in that phase, because then we talked about, okay, but why do you think you're such a bad mother? Like, you're not, everyone says you're a great mother. I say that, everyone thinks you're cool. And then it went into her insecurities. And because I'm also, I've worked a lot with people tracing things down to the root where they come from in their childhood. Like, that's sort of what I do for like my work, right? So I'm sort of being half worked on, and also being, it's sort of like it's not even, there's no therapy going on, but at the same time there's therapy going on in many levels, because we talk about her insecurities, how they caused her to do certain things a certain way with me, and then how her mother made her feel when she was young, and like how horrible that was. And I know all the right questions to ask to go deeper on that, because I'm trained to do that, right? It's just like, I'm crying because of the childhood she had, and she's crying because of the childhood that I had, which, honestly wasn't horrible, but, she's just able to zoom in on everything that went wrong, and yeah, what her mother like was like, and how that affected her, and I'm like helping her work through that because it's coming up for her, and at the same time I'm working through what came up for me, and like she's acknowledging that. So it's like almost like primal therapy with your parents there in real life, where that never almost happens, because usually when you do any sort of trauma work, you're processing things where your parents are not there for it. They were there when like whatever mistake was made, but they're not there to witness the resolution, right? And this is like, so, it just works so deep. It works on me, it works on her, and then my girlfriend is there. And there's like people around us, right? And like projectile tears. It's just so much snot. I was wiping so much snot and tears, and like people keep handing me tissues, and I keep like filling them up and like throwing them away, and like more tissues and more toilet paper, and like there's so much crying, and it's like, well, we're in this, we're in this deep now. This is gonna go deep, and my girlfriend's there also, being included in this, because my mom's like really proud of her, and the thing is, my girlfriend and my mom have like very similar childhood trauma, so they recognize so much in each other, because they've had the same type of conditioning from their mother. And so my girlfriend's feeling everything that my mom described that she was going through, right, when she was, and the thing is, the beautiful thing about that is like we got to see firsthand what mistakes we would have made, passing conditioning on to our child. But now that we have this, whole thing with my mom there, and it just becomes clear, like, okay, so she tried to not put her childhood conditioning onto me, and she did a great job, but she also overcorrected. And that's also a mistake, is also to overcorrect. So whatever do I have a good example of that? I'm not sure that I do, but yeah, I'm not sure that I do, but it's like, if you're raised in a horrible way and you're like, I'm gonna raise my child in a not horrible way, I'm gonna not make those mistakes. And she did that, to her credit, she did that really well, because, it was like 100 times better than what she went through. And the only thing that then goes wrong is then you're trying too hard to not make those mistakes, and not make any, that was it. She was like, we came to the conclusion by talking everything through that she had been trying really hard to not make any mistakes and to make me feel like she didn't have any shortcomings, like she didn't have any trauma, she didn't have any conditioning. She was able to be a full, complete, 100% spectrum, all needs provided mother. There was no like gaps in her there was like no gaps, and she wanted to give me the experience of like there's no gaps, everything's provided. And the thing is like that's not really true, because there were certain things that she lacked. She lacked a lot of acceptance. Like she was not accepted, you know. And there's things that damage a person, that create trauma, and if you pass that on to your, if you try really hard to just hide that from your child because you want your child to have the best, I'm going to pretend to not have any damage from my childhood. That's also not good, because I felt that as, and like this is going to sound like I'm blaming her, like I'm super grateful to her. Okay, she's like, she did such great things with like what she got, and inspired me to do even better. So yeah, much love. It's all good. But the thing is, if you're trying to hide that you have some damaging curse from your own conditioning, then that is like, you know, as a child you can feel that like something's not right there, something's not quite right. Like maybe she's trying a bit too hard to be like a great mother, or maybe she's a bit insecure about whether she's doing the right thing. There can also be, you know, those subtle dynamics that's like where you're not being quite real. And she brought it up, and after I thought about it in the trip, I could sense that like, yeah, maybe I could feel that she was like trying to hide her insecurities from me with the best intentions, but it still feels like there's something not real there that I can't trust, and that did affect me. Yeah, and what we learned there was basically how to circumvent making the same mistakes, because Maria has, I mean, we both have conditioning that we wouldn't like to pass on, and if you try to hide that and act like a perfect parent even though you're not, like that's also going to do some damage. So the best thing is to be real. And what that means for me, and we talked about that later, is I just didn't have a good introduction to like aggression, how to deal with aggression, what is physical violence, how do you defend yourself, how do you deal with aggressive people in a healthy way, how do you know your strength. Like I had none of that because both my parents were very traumatized by aggression. So it's like, oh, I'm just gonna keep aggression out of my kid's life. And therefore I lacked a proper introduction to the topic, and I got into many fights that I shouldn't have gotten into because I just thought that was so unfamiliar to me, and it was something I needed, and that was being hidden from me by my parents. I was not being educated in like, this is how you defend yourself, this is what fights are about, you don't just go into a fight, you always try to avoid it, but this is how you handle yourself. Like I got none of that, and so I was reckless, and I got beaten up a lot because I felt like this is something I need to explore, and I'm not getting any guidance on it, and I was just, yeah, uninformed, reckless, did stupid things that could have been avoided if my parents had admitted like, hey, I don't know about aggression, but here's a guy who can teach you, you know, here's a martial arts guy who can really teach you to defend yourself. Which is what I want to do for my kid. You know, I don't want to, because that's what I was struggling with. Like, I'm not ready to be a parent because, you know, there's these gaps that I have. I didn't know how to make friends in school. I didn't know how to be tough and not get walked all over. So when if my kid would get bullied, I'm not gonna have necessarily the best advice. So I'm not ready to be a parent because I'm not a perfect parent yet. And like, here's the actual lesson. Like, you can't hide that. You're gonna have some gaps. It's okay to admit those gaps, and like, there's other people who can fill those gaps. So, you know, if my child wants to know about how to defend himself, I'm not gonna pretend like, no, that's not a thing, you don't need to do that. I'm also not gonna pretend that I know everything about that. No, we're gonna find a guy who can teach you that stuff, and that's what I can provide as a dad. You know, like I know what and this still brings me to tears. Like I know what I have to give and what I don't have to give, because I didn't get that in my upbringing, and that's okay, you know, that's okay, and you can't be dishonest about that. And that's what I learned from doing mescaline with my mom. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Click like and subscribe. The aftermath of that was that she was super blasted for 14, 16 hours, and still, like, it was really hard to sleep after that. We held each other's hands and talked about all kinds of stuff. It was like this layer of distance between me and my mom that I had felt for the last 6 or so years. It was like, it's lifted. Like, we could hug each other again, we could hold each other's hands, we could talk about actual things. She felt like she was 80 years old after that. She's not 80 years old, far from it. I think she's like approaching 60 or something, but she was completely destroyed physically for like a day, and then she was doing fine. And the great thing is that she was on antidepressants, and she got off the antidepressants. She took SSRIs, and she was like, oh, for this mescaline trip I'm gonna get off my SSRIs for like 5 weeks or something, right? So they're completely out of her system. She's willing to do that. I respect that so much. She's willing to get off antidepressant for 5 weeks just to do this mescaline trip with me. Like, who would actually do that, you know? Because she needs those things. And the thing is, she didn't go back on. She didn't go back on. She doesn't need those filthy SSRIs anymore. Because after she did so much crying during that trip, she doesn't... That's the way I understood it. It's like, I can't speak for her, but the way I understood it was... she now feels more connected to herself in a way that it doesn't feel threatening to feel emotions, basically. So she doesn't need the medication now, and she's doing like all the other kinds of therapy now. She's doing journaling. I'm so proud of her, and didn't go back on the SSRI. So now, you know, at 60, like, she's going through even more healing than seemed possible before. And I think it's such a beautiful outcome. So thanks for listening, and see you in the next video.